Atlantis began in legend long before maps, when ancient sailors feared the western sea. The first full tale comes from Plato, who wrote that priests told Solon of a lost power. They said Atlantis had risen beyond the pillars of Heracles, past the known edge of Greece. There in the great Atlantic stood an island realm larger than Libya and Asia together. Plato placed Atlantis in a time 9,000 years before Solon, far before known Greece. Whether that number was exact, symbolic, or mistaken still divides every scholar who studies it. In the story, Atlantis was not a village of fishermen, but a brilliant and mighty empire. It was said to be blessed by the gods, rich in metal, timber, fertile soil, and trade. The island itself was described as broad, beautiful, and arranged with almost divine precision. At its heart stood a royal capital built in circles of land and water around a hill in Plato's tale. That hill, legend says, had sheltered a mortal woman named Cleito in the earliest days. She became central to the island's destiny when the sea god Poseidon saw and desired her. To protect Cleito, Poseidon shaped rings of sea and earth around her home like walls. He also raised springs nearby, one warm and one cold, giving the place life and wonder. From Poseidon and Cleito came 5 pairs of twin sons, 10 princes born to rule according to legend. The eldest of them was Atlas, and from his name the island took the name Atlantis in ancient memory. Atlas became the high king above his brothers, lord over the central realm and the sea. The Atlantic Ocean itself later carried his name in memory of that vanished sovereign kingdom. Each brother ruled a region, yet all owed loyalty to Atlas and the sacred old laws by old tradition. Those laws, according to Plato, were inscribed on a pillar of orichalcum within a temple. Orichalcum was a shining metal praised as precious, second only to gold, in Atlantean lands. The capital was famed for dazzling walls, harbors, docks, shipyards, racecourses, and shrines. Bridges crossed the circular canals, and great gates controlled soldiers, merchants, and traffic. At the center rose a grand temple of Poseidon and Cleito, huge, glittering, and revered. It was decorated with gold, silver, ivory, and the red glow of rare Atlantean metals. Inside stood statues of kings and sea creatures, reminders that power came from ocean blood. The people of Atlantis were said to be numerous, disciplined, proud, and highly organized. They farmed broad plains to the south, where canals watered fields and measured lines. The plain itself was described as astonishingly level, rectangular, and designed for great harvests. Their horses were raised in number, and chariots, grain, fruit, and cattle filled the land. Mountains on the northern side protected the island and held forests, villages, and rivers. Those highlands supplied timber, hunting grounds, stone, and streams that fed the lower plains. Ports along the coasts connected Atlantis to distant peoples through trade, tribute, and conquest. As wealth grew, Atlantean fleets became feared across islands, shores, and western seas. They mastered navigation, built strong ships, and sent expeditions far beyond their home waters. Many later writers imagined Atlanteans as engineers, astronomers, and keepers of forgotten sciences. Some legends say they understood crystals, star cycles, and energies lost to modern men. Others believe that part was added much later by mystics seeking a magical ancient past. Plato himself speaks less of magic than of order, law, ambition, and moral decline by old tradition. In his version, Atlantis first lived with balance because divine blood still guided human desire. The rulers honored justice, met in ritual assembly, and judged each other by sacred law. They remembered that wealth and power were gifts, not excuses for cruelty or excess in Plato's tale. But as generations passed, the divine portion in them grew thin and mortal weakness rose. Greed entered the councils, pride hardened the kings, and hunger for dominion replaced restraint. Atlantis turned from a blessed realm into an empire seeking rule over foreign nations. It subdued many islands, reached into parts of Libya, and pressed toward Europe itself. Then, Plato says, Atlantis set its gaze upon lands within the Mediterranean world in ancient memory. At that moment, ancient Athens, still pure and heroic in his telling, stood against it. This ideal old Athens became the moral opposite of Atlantis, modest, brave, and just. Where Atlantis was rich and swollen with power, Athens was disciplined and faithful to virtue. The clash between them formed the political heart of Plato's warning to later civilizations. He was not only telling a tale of a lost island, but teaching a lesson about states by old tradition. A nation may shine in wealth, architecture, armies, and knowledge, yet still rot from within. That is why Atlantis has endured for centuries as both marvel and moral catastrophe in Plato's tale. Still, outside philosophy, people wanted to know whether the island had truly existed somewhere. Many searched west of Gibraltar, where Plato placed the gateway beyond the known sea. Others moved Atlantis to the Azores, the Canary Islands, Madeira, or submerged Atlantic ridges. Some believed it had links to Minoan Crete, whose civilization suffered disaster and fire. The eruption of Thera on Santorini inspired many modern comparisons to a drowned paradise. It destroyed ports, sent tsunamis across the sea, and weakened a brilliant Bronze Age power. Because of that, some think Plato blended real catastrophes into one grand symbolic narrative. Others search near Spain, especially around marshlands and ancient flood zones of the southwest. They argue that trade, metals, and sudden destruction could echo parts of the old account. Still others place Atlantis everywhere from Antarctica to the Caribbean and even the Sahara. Those ideas are dramatic, but most historians remain cautious and ask for stronger evidence. No verified ruin has ever been found that proves Plato's Atlantis exactly as described. Even so, the absence of proof has never ended the hunger to keep searching for Atlantis. Part of Atlantis lives in geography, but another part lives deep in the human mind by old tradition. It represents the perfect city, the fallen empire, and the warning beneath every ambition. Because the story came from ancient authority, it feels older and heavier than most myths. Plato says Egyptian priests preserved the memory, while Greek traditions had already forgotten it. That detail gave the legend a chain of transmission, as if history itself whispered it. According to the priests, the sea once held many islands and a vast, powerful realm by old tradition. That realm could send armies across water and challenge lands far beyond its own coasts. It also possessed immense natural wealth, including metals, elephants, forests, and rich black soil. Descriptions of elephants fascinated readers, suggesting extraordinary wealth and exotic grandeur. The royal plain was cut by canals so regular they seemed almost beyond ancient ability. To some, that sounds like engineering genius. To others, it sounds like philosophical exaggeration. The 10 kings of Atlantis met at fixed times to deliberate and renew their bonds in ancient memory. They hunted bulls in sacred ceremony, then swore judgment and loyalty beneath holy laws. They wore dark blue robes for those rituals, a detail that adds mystery even now in ancient memory. After judgment, they wrote decrees and records, preserving the order of their federated realm. This confederation of princes made Atlantis more than a city. It was a structured kingdom. Atlas remained first among them, but the line of rule stretched through noble houses. From Atlas also came a broader legacy, for later tradition tied him to cosmic burdens. In Greek myth, Atlas is the Titan forced to bear the heavens upon his shoulders according to legend. That is not exactly Plato's king Atlas, yet the names fused in popular imagination by old tradition. So Atlantis gained not only an emperor, but an aura of celestial mythic gravity according to legend. Many storytellers later made Atlas a wise founder, lawgiver, navigator, or priest-king. In esoteric traditions, Atlantis became a cradle of hidden wisdom passed to Egypt and beyond. Those later tales claimed survivors carried sacred knowledge after the destruction of the island. They were said to found schools, temples, dynasties, and secret brotherhoods in foreign lands. Such claims remain unproven, but they widened Atlantis from one myth into a world system. In modern culture, this made Atlantis a source for occult lore, fantasy, and speculation. Some imagined crystal towers, airships, strange energy devices, and advanced healing arts. Others imagined a noble race brought low by vanity, war, and spiritual corruption in ancient memory. The older tale, however, remains more grounded, a rich naval empire judged by the gods. In that older vision, the Atlanteans were human enough to be admired and feared, according to legend. They loved splendor, built magnificently, commanded armies, and trusted their greatness to endure. That confidence is essential because Atlantis falls not as a weak land but a proud one. Its doom matters because everything about it seemed made to last beyond ordinary kingdoms. The final destruction comes with chilling suddenness in Plato's account of the island. There came violent earthquakes and floods, disasters so severe that men could barely endure them. In a single dreadful day and night, the warlike power of Atlantis was overwhelmed in ancient memory. The island sank beneath the sea, and the waters above it became impassable with mud in Plato's tale. That detail of the muddy shallows made the loss feel strangely practical and historical. It suggested ships later avoided the region because ruins and silt clogged the passage. Literal or symbolic, the image endures. Glory swallowed, sea routes broken, memory dimmed. No farewell speech survives from Atlantis, no king's last order, no witness from the docks. We are given only aftermath, silence, depth, lost stone, and a name that refuses to die. Because the ending is so abrupt, later ages kept trying to imagine what happened next. Did the people see warnings in the sea before the final night of ruin finally arrived? Did temples shake, animals flee, and harbors drain before monstrous waves struck the shore? Did Atlas or his heirs command evacuation in time, or did pride delay escape once more? Did priests pray in the central temple while towers cracked and bronze gates tore free? These questions have no ancient answers, yet they haunt every retelling of Atlantis in Plato's tale. Some legends say a few survivors escaped by ship and carried memories to other lands. In those versions, refugees told of circular harbors, shining walls, and a kingdom now gone. They spoke of noble houses, strict laws, grand processions, and a sea turned murderous. Others say no one escaped, because Atlantis had to vanish completely to become a warning. If even fragments survive too clearly, the myth might become only history and lose power. By remaining half-hidden, Atlantis stays suspended between fact, dream, allegory, and prophecy. That uncertain place is exactly why people still debate not only where, but what it was. Was Atlantis a true island remembered through broken oral tradition and altered over centuries? Was it Plato's invention, built to criticize imperial arrogance and praise civic virtue? Was it a fusion of many disasters, including floods, eruptions, wars, and drowned coasts? Or was it memory of an ice age world, when seas were lower and coasts stretched wider? Scientists seek evidence in stone, pottery, bones, inscriptions, harbors, and datable layers. Mystics often seek patterns, symbols, and echoes between distant myths and sacred traditions. Writers seek atmosphere because Atlantis is one of history's most powerful, vanished horizons. Filmmakers seek spectacle, while readers seek the ache of beauty, destroyed too soon in Plato's tale. But ordinary listeners often seek something simpler, the feeling that the world still hides wonders. Atlantis answers that desire perfectly because it is grand, ancient, and forever just out of reach. It lies beyond the map and beneath the sea, where certainty cannot easily follow in ancient memory. For that reason, every generation rebuilds Atlantis in its own image, hope, and fear. In the 19th century, some writers treated it as the mother of all civilizations. They argued that Egypt, the Americas, and Old Europe shared roots in Atlantean migration. Modern archaeology does not support such sweeping claims, yet they spread widely and persisted. In the 20th century, occult movements gave Atlantis psychic powers and lost technologies. Later fiction added submarines, glowing stones, immortal sages, and hidden undersea chambers. Films and games turned Atlantis into a shining puzzle box of ruins, engines, and secrets. Yet every reinvention returns to the same questions: what, where, who ruled, and why it fell. What was Atlantis? Who ruled it? Where was it located? And why did it finally fall by old tradition? The ruler most often named is Atlas, first king and symbol of Atlantean authority in ancient memory. The divine founder was Poseidon, whose union with Cleito began the royal bloodline by old tradition. The people were islanders, farmers, sailors, builders, soldiers, priests, merchants, and princes. They lived in a society of wealth and order, then drifted toward power and excess in ancient memory. It appeared in the legend in remote antiquity, before known Greek history was formed. It vanished in one catastrophic period of earthquakes and floods sent by divine judgment. It stood, according to Plato, beyond the Pillars of Heracles in the Atlantic Ocean by old tradition. It endures, according to everyone who still remembers it, in the uneasy space of myth. Even the name Atlantis sounds like surf breaking in a dark hall of memory and warning. Behind that door stand marble courts, bronze prows, sacred bulls, and silent canals in Plato's tale. There are mountain forests in the distance, and a bright temple rising beside the sea. There are kings debating law beneath metal inscriptions that outlast the men who read them. There are crowded ports at sunset, where merchants unload purple cloth and polished amber. There are horse teams crossing the plain, and fishermen mending nets by tidal gates by old tradition. There are children who have never imagined that their island can die in a night according to legend. There are priests watching the stars, and generals counting ships in moonlit harbors in Plato's tale. There is music in the festival courts and incense drifting through columns of gold by old tradition. There is confidence everywhere, that fatal confidence which says tomorrow will resemble today. And then the ground trembles once, lightly, like a warning dismissed by the proud in ancient memory. The sea pulls back from the docks, exposing stone, weed, wreckage, and stranded fish. People stare from bridges and towers, not yet understanding what silence has replaced the waves. Then comes the roar, deeper than thunder, as the sea itself returns carrying judgment. Walls split, horses scream, fires vanish under black water, and bells ring through the dark. Ships are hurled into streets, statues fall, and canal gates twist like broken toys in Plato's tale. The temple of Poseidon shakes while the rings of the city become deadly water traps in Plato's tale. Some run for the heights, some kneel in prayer, and some call the names of kings in ancient memory. But the island that mastered the sea cannot master the fury rising from beneath it by old tradition. By dawn, if dawn still came through the storm, Atlantis was already going under, according to legend. The proud rings of land and water were broken, swallowed, and ground into legend in ancient memory. Above them closed the same ocean that once gave the island wealth, power, and dominion. That is why Atlantis remains more than a lost place. It becomes a perfect reversal by old tradition. The source of greatness becomes the instrument of ruin, and blessing becomes judgment. This reversal gives the myth moral force, whether or not the city ever truly stood by old tradition. It warned that splendor without humility invites collapse that no wall can prevent in ancient memory. It warns that power over nature can never mean standing safely above nature itself by old tradition. It warns that memory survives longer than stone, and that names can outlive empires in Plato's tale, not because we are certain it existed, but because we recognize ourselves in it according to legend. We build, prosper, compete, boast, expand, and assume our systems will hold forever in Plato's tale. We admire intelligence, order, wealth, and innovation, just as Atlantis admired them. But every age must ask what happens when strength outruns wisdom and desire outruns law. In that question, Atlantis is never fully past. It rises each time civilization forgets. It waits in books, maps, arguments, dreams, documentaries, and fireside stories according to legend. It waits in the deep Atlantic, in Santorini's ash, and in the human heart itself, in ancient memory. And every time someone asks where Atlantis was, another deeper question quietly follows. What kind of world are we building now, and will it remember how to remain human in ancient memory?